Hello there, my name's Sherry Forsyth and I'm a peak performance and bereavement coach, and I'm doing a series in the month of September, which is self-care month, on self-compassion. Today what I'm talking about is the surprising link between pain and illness and self-compassion. In previous videos I've talked about the three elements of self-compassion. I've spoken about Kristin Neff, who's the guru about self-compassion. I've given you a few tips on how to practice it, and also spoken about why it is so hard for us to practice self-compassion. So today I'm going to speak about the physical and emotional aspects relating to self-compassion. So I'm going to start with the physical. When we get sick, we may very easily be on the receiving end of compassion from other people. And we revel in it. We absolutely love it. But when we are sick, do we treat ourselves with that same kindness? I think I can answer the question that actually most of us don't. How many of you go into work when you are ill? Because for many reasons. No one else is going to do the work. There might be a huge backlog, and then you'll have to go into work and catch it all up, so it's just not worth it. So we are expecting our bodies to do the impossible. In addition to the normal load of the stress load of just working and living, our body also needs to try and heal. So we are forcing our body to cope with a double load. It has to get better as well as deal with all the stresses and strains. A little unfair of us, don't you think? Have you ever thought about how badly we treat our bodies? Or let's make it personal, how badly you treat your body. And yet we still expect our bodies to perform flawlessly, and most of the time they do. Until we've abused it just one time too often. Just one time too many. This is not treating our body with self-compassion. And I'm guilty of that myself. Many years ago, I ran a swim school, and it was towards the very end of the season. I developed a flu, but of course, because I'm so driven, I had to carry on teaching, even though in fact, it would have made no difference to the children, and it probably would have been a pleasure for the parents not to have to bring them to swimming lessons. The result of that, because I didn't listen to my body, I didn't treat it compassionately, was the development of chronic fatigue syndrome, and right up until today, I have to manage my energy very carefully. How stupid of me to carry on forcing my body instead of treating it with kindness. So when we have a short illness, treating ourselves with self-compassion is maybe not as important, because we probably are going to get better. But what we want to do is we want to avoid having that double load on our body, where we're trying to live and we're trying to heal. So we think the whole world will collapse if we don't get into the office and do our work. But actually, hasn't COVID taught us otherwise? But if you have a chronic illness, that is a very different story, because in all likelihood, it's probably going to be very long term. There might be some diseases where, in fact, you know you're not going to get better from it. And this can very often lead to a negative mindset. So we need to be careful what we say to ourselves, because we are listening. Okay, so that self-talk is the first area that we need to visit. Then we need to move towards accepting our situation, which sounds easy, but I know it's very, very difficult. One thing that I have found very beneficial is, instead of seeing all the things that you can't do, see the things that you can do. So in other words, don't look from the top down on the negative of what you can't do. Look from the bottom up at the things that you can do. And that has been very, very helpful to me over the years. if you're wanting some more additional motivation, you can go and listen to TED Talks or read books by people like Nick Vujicic, who was born without arms and he's got one tiny little leg. He is busy doing what he can do and do it well. He's written books, he's a motivational speaker, he's married, he has children. So he's doing what he can do. He's not beating himself up about what he can't do. There are other TED Talks that are incredibly inspiring, and I have spoken about them before. Sam Burns, who suffered from progeria and very sadly recently passed away. And also Sean Stevenson, who has osteogenesis, which is brittle bone disease. So if you're in need of inspiration, go and have a look at those folk. They are truly, truly amazing. Okay, so that's the physical aspect of illness. Let's talk about the emotional aspect as well. From the studies in neuroscience, we know that our thoughts affect our bodies. In other words, our thoughts can in fact make us ill. And as Caroline Myss says, our biography becomes our biology. So how can self-compassion help in this situation? So when there's something that we're not allowing ourselves to feel or to acknowledge, or if there's a negative mindset that we keep repeating to ourselves, it becomes a form of energy that gets stored in our bodies. And this energy kind of becomes stuck, and when it becomes stuck, it becomes a physical symptom. It can be headaches, it can be backache, it can be body aches, it can be autoimmune illnesses, and the list goes on. But this process of stuffing down our emotions, which is very much part of the Western culture, we have to have the stiff upper lip, we can't wear our heart on our sleeve, can be very harmful to our bodies. And the process is called somaticizing, which means we take our emotional and mental state and we transfer that into our body, into physical symptoms. We don't know that we're doing this. It's on a very subconscious level. So when we don't feel or face our emotions, our body starts to speak to us through the symptoms that it starts to manifest and exhibit. And the compassionate approach would then be to listen to our body. But do we? No, once again, we override it. And when we override it, we distract ourselves with busy work. We deny that there's an issue. We tell ourselves just to get on with it. In other words, we carry on driving our body in that double load. And then months or years later, suddenly we develop inexplicable backaches, headaches, weakness, fatigue, chronic illness, and again, the list goes on. So instead of choosing the kind option, we choose the driven option. And we add more and more and more pressure onto our bodies, which can result in illness. Does this make sense to you? So what about you? Do you have physical aches and pains? Do you have a chronic, but maybe not massively impactful disease, but something that will in fact be affecting your life? So then once we have all those symptoms, we then once again numb ourselves in doing all sorts of things that will not allow us to feel what we need to be feeling. So by numbing ourselves, we overeat, we overdrink, we overshop, we get addicted, we self-medicate because we don't want to feel. We in fact are running away from our emotions. Then we decide, okay, we carry on running away from our emotions and we just get sicker and sicker. And then what exacerbates the whole situation is, should we get to the realization that maybe we do need to treat ourselves with self-compassion, oh my golly, but we don't deserve the self-compassion. How can we love ourselves when everything seems to be going wrong in our life? How can we love ourselves when we're such a failure either in our family, in our personal life, in our job, with our friends. How, and this is particularly for women, how can I possibly love myself when I don't look anywhere near as beautiful as all the people in the media and my friends? How can I love myself when my career is stuck? And there'll be lots and lots of excuses as to why we can't love ourselves, and we do it over and over again. How can I love myself when I've maybe hurt someone? How can I love myself because I'm this awful person? In other words, how can I love myself when I'm not perfect? So, is there an emotion that you are denying? You're just forcing yourself to carry on. Most of us don't even know that we're doing this. Is there maybe some truth which you're not facing or accepting about yourself? So what I'm speaking about is that your physical issues could have an emotional base. And usually that comes from there's something within ourselves that we are not loving. So how can we treat ourselves with self-compassion in order to heal emotionally and physically? How can we be kind and gentle with ourselves? So the first step is, imagine a friend is in exactly the same condition as you are. And how would you treat him or her? And then treat yourself in the same way. So what we need to do is become aware of the feeling that we are repressing, be kind and understanding about that emotion, and then embrace it and deal with it. And if you need professional help in dealing with it, so be it. Okay? But we need to stop punishing our bodies because of our toxic thoughts and because we feel so driven and because we feel we're not good enough. I'm going to say that again. We need to stop punishing our bodies because of our toxic thoughts. We will then return to a sense of well-being and balance. So in the comment box below, I'd love to know how you treat your body with compassion or yourself with compassion. What kind of things do you do? Do you allow yourself to have that sleep in the middle of the day when you're tired? Do you give yourself a lovely candlelit bath when your body is sore? What do you do? I'd love to hear. So in conclusion, Gay Hendricks, who's a psychologist in the States, he was really battling with his life. And about 35 years ago, he had an insight which changed his life. I quote him, "I identified a skill that worked like magic to solve nearly every problem I had." Take a guess at what the skill was. He needed to learn to love himself. In other words, treat himself with self-compassion, love, and kindness. And once he started doing that, his whole life turned around and just entered into a flow. Successful marriage, successful business, life was just really wonderful for him. If you'd like to read his best-selling book, which he wrote in 1985, so it is an older book, but still very valid today. It's a book called Learning to Love Yourself, A Guide to Becoming Centered. And the name of the chap, again, is Gay Hendricks. So our bodies take strain, whether due to an emotional or a physical cause. And we need to learn to listen to our symptoms, to listen to what our body is trying to tell us through the symptoms, to deal with the emotion, the possible emotion that's causing it, and then to give our bodies the rest and the gentleness and the nurturing that they need in order to heal. So I challenge you to be kind to yourself physically and emotionally and see how your world changes. As always, thank you so much for watching this video, and I invite you to follow me on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, and I love all the comments that you make.